Hi everyone, my name's Leanne Nallmeyer and I lead the brand and the digital client experience for mass affluent segment at IG Wealth Management. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Adiela.
Hi everyone, Adiela Aviram. I lead marketing for a portion of our business within Manulife Canada. It's a business unit called Affinity Markets, and since we're not very well known, I will make a shameless plug. We sell health insurance, life insurance, travel insurance, and mortgage insurance for individuals.
Thank you. Okay, so our panel today, we're talking about the transformation, how we do organizational change management. And when we were talking about this prior to this session, some of the questions that we came up with were, there's a lot that goes into deciding what the organization is going to look like, and then changing it to reflect changing demands. So, question one, setting the scene. What are some of the external drivers, and I'll start with you, Leanne, if that's okay. What are some of the external drivers you're noticing that are putting pressure on financial marketers these days?
Sure, well, I'll try to avoid all cliches in speaking at a 1,000-foot view, because I know when I come to the conference, sometimes it's helpful when people give me little nuggets. And the one thing that really stuck out to me this year was I have a content team that works closely with our investment strategy team. And we really felt the impact of geopolitical market tension. We felt it with our workload. It was from one perspective great because people wanted to read our content about market commentaries. But from another perspective, it was really challenging because market budgets were getting squeezed at a time when we had to do more. So it was really the old adage of, doing more with less. And I think the second big thing that I've really been thinking about this year is the role that generative AI plays, and not just in the way that it helps us be more efficient as marketers, because I think a lot of us have figured that out. We talk about a lot of marketing tools and efficiencies that come from AI, but the piece that's been on my radar is the impact that it has on distribution, product teams, in my world, advisors, because I work in the human advice space, and all of a sudden everybody's a marketer. So that makes my team's role more about setting up those guardrails. How do we kind of enable everyone that now has these tools to kind of become an extension of our marketing team? So those are two top for me.
Excellent. Adiela, same subject, please.
I think I relate deeply to everything that Leanne said. I would add, from our perspective, what has changed on the outside versus on the inside is we have all these extreme customer expectations. So as an example, we serve doctors of Ontario. So if you're a doctor, you work with us to get health insurance. The expectation of doctors is heightened, extremely heightened, because they're in a fast-paced environment. They are saving lives. They need things to happen way faster.
Wow.
So I think for us, it's having to respond to, and of course expectations are high everywhere, but it's having to respond to the increased expectations of all the diverse groups that we serve.
Excellent. Thank you. And continuing, Adiela, can you talk about something new that happened in the organization? How did you and your team respond? What was, something that opened your organization's mind to doing work new ways?
Yeah, so within our organization, we've dealt with quite a bit of change in the recent past. Maybe I'll touch on a few things. One is we had marketers sitting in many different spots in the organization. So believe it or not, we had some marketers sitting in distribution, we had some marketers maybe sitting in product-ish, and then we had some marketers kind of sort of sitting in marketing. So we had to go find them all. Thankfully, this happened before I came, so I caught the tail end of that. We had to go find them all. Where did they sit? What did they do for a living? Is it marketing or is it not? And then we had to convince all the different stakeholders that we needed to bring them all together into one group that served as a true marketing group. And then after I came on board, I had to figure out, okay, what do we do as a group of marketers, and what's everyone's job? One of the most common questions I got when I first joined the team was, I'm confused about my job. So with my leadership team, we had to do quite an extensive exercise, and we're still going through some of that, of actually rewriting some people's job descriptions.
Wow, very nice. And Leanne, same question. Talk about something that's happened in the org, changes, how you've responded to those changes.
Sure. So the example for me was really a pilot program that we ran this year, and it was around digital lead generation. So traditionally, our business was all about, and our marketing metrics were all about, share of wallet, client engagement, some traditional kind of marketing metrics as well. And we'd been having an ongoing conversation with the C-suite about needing to build a capability for digital growth beyond just referrals. And there are some great marketing programs that actually support referrals, and those are up and running and working and delivering. But we know that that will max out kind of at a certain level. And I don't know if anyone in the room is from Fisher Investments Canada, but if you are, I'm going to thank you and track you down. They might not be here. I think they're bigger actually in the States, but I would like to give them a shout out for their great marketing, which was digital lead gen. They even did some direct to TV commercials, etc. And we were able to take that to our leadership group and say, look what's happening in our space, because this will allow us to grow even more than our current approaches. But we're going to need to be able to do a pilot, and we're going to have to build a funnel. And that was really the challenging thing for us, because we had to set expectations internally that out of the gate, we weren't going to beat the status quo, because there's a lot of marketing work that goes into building a funnel. There's a lot of metrics and steps that you have to take that the C-suite doesn't want to hear about. So we were able to kind of set up a pilot process that would allow us to test creative, learn what delivers, to bring in meeting requests to meet with an advisor, test different digital marketing mechanics to do that, and kind of set some definition of what success would look like with the first pilot. The way that we structured ourselves, the change organizationally, I think a lot of it was our conversations and kind of working with the business to understand what we were trying to accomplish and to align on those metrics and the common goal. But the other piece is that we actually don't run an agile marketing shop day in and day out. I've done it before in a past life. I think Adela does it now. But what we were able to do was say, for this pilot, we're going to actually adopt an agile mindset, and we're going to change the way that we work as marketing to make sure that we're laser focused on these goals. So that really allowed us to do iterative testing of creative in a much faster cycle, go to the market a little bit more quickly and figure out what was delivering, and then be able to constantly show progress towards a goal. Because again, it all started from the premise that we knew we weren't going to be able to beat the incumbent method of lead generation right off our first bat, but we had to be able to show progress.
It's really interesting. And just pulling on that thread for a second, what you talked about success and measurement. Can you talk a little bit about what does success look like when you're doing something new like Agile, when you're changing, when you're doing lead gen? Can you just share with us a little bit about what success metrics look like for you?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question. I think Chris really hit on it, especially in his Q&A section. It's very important what metrics you sign up for as a marketer. And I think that, as a marketing leader, that's really the job number one that I owe to my team, is to not sign us up for metrics that are outside of our control, but also not commit to metrics that actually aren't meaningful to the business. And Chris really did a good job of expanding on that. So for me, what success looked like in that initial campaign really was meetings with an advisor, but we agreed that we were going to do full funnel measurement. So we were going to be able to have the data and the capabilities to measure those interactions through and be able to look at the bottom line impact. But we did that with the understanding that the sales team and sales leadership had to take some accountability for the bottom of the funnel, and that our team had to take accountability for the top of the funnel. And when I reflect back on a lot of campaigns that have maybe gone a little bit south or that haven't hit right in my career, it almost always comes down to signing up to the wrong metric and not having that upfront discussion. So I think that's just a really good takeaway, and something that I try to apply, anytime I'm at the beginning beginning of a marketing campaign or initiative.
And how comfortable are those discussions? Like, are these heated? Are these collegial?
Well, I think sometimes it's very uncomfortable because not only are we operating in a world where everyone's a marketer, we're operating in a world where people and sometimes our business partners have come into the meeting and they already have an idea of what they want to see executed. So it's a little bit uncomfortable to say, you know, I love the ideas, I love the creativity, I would love to test that creative. Just help me understand what success will look like when I get to the end of it. You know, so often I think there's this desire, and it comes from a really good place. We want to build it, we want to ship it, we want to interact with the market. Absolutely, we all want that. But we have to commit before we invest resources into what we're trying to get out the other end. Because we all know, and probably all of us have worked on marketing teams that have been completely stretched thin, and then nothing that you do hits, right? Because there's absolutely no focus. So I think it is uncomfortable. But I think if you can keep the conversation really focused on how does this relate to business, you know, growth and success, just help me understand, I think it's going to get you through as a marketer.
Excellent. Thank you. Adiela, same question. Talking about the organizational change and bringing everybody together. I can't imagine those conversations. But success metrics, can you give us some examples from Manulife?
Yeah, so I'll speak for the business unit that my team serves. I do feel it's important to figure out where each marketing team is in their evolution. So I would imagine that some marketing teams are very evolved and some are not. So for us, we think about, before we even start talking about metrics, for me, something that's really important is for my team to understand why they are here. So we don't exist to make tchotchkes, we're not here to make pretty PDFs. Yeah. For me, one key measure of success is to actually change that perception of, please do not call us when you need something to look pretty. That is not why we are here. We are here to drive leads and sales for the business. So I would say that's step one, is to reframe the way that we are seen and the way that we see ourselves, quite frankly. So this also impacts the way that I would like my team to think of themselves. Then if we move beyond that, then we can start to talk about KPIs. And again, I would say we need to spend some time building a solid foundation. So the analogy that I like to use is home construction. We are not at the stage in our home building where we are staging and putting pretty furniture and flowers. That's not where we're at right now. We are ripping off all of the drywall and looking at all the plumbing and all the electrical, all the stuff that literally no one cares about, before we put back the drywall and stage and put the pretty flowers. So I think it's really important to understand where you're at in the journey and to share that with all the stakeholders. So in this analogy, what we like to think about is how can we drive the most qualified leads for the business? We do look at sales, and we will get to a point where we say, what are the directly attributable final sales? Because we are in a direct-to-consumer business, so people can purchase our products online or over the phone, so it's a bit more measurable than the advice business. So we are in that unique situation. And so we'll start with, can we deliver the best quality leads to the business? And then we will evolve from there to what are the measurable sales from all of the activities that we do.
Very interesting. And you've given me such a golden opening. I want to ask you a follow-up question. That house analogy, I've been where the plumber has come in and cut drywall and showed me the aneurysm. Did you have any nasty surprises when you started ripping out drywall?
Many.
Okay.
Many. So as I mentioned, we had teams sitting in different places. I think the more I talk to people in marketing teams or building marketing teams, the more I realize that this is quite common. Is where does all the data sit? That's question number one, especially if you have different little businesses. Like within our business, we have health insurance, health and dental, travel, life, mortgage, et cetera, right? So they are quite different. So where does all the data sit? How can we get access to all the data? And then how can we bring it all together? And then how can we attribute it? So if, for example, you may have seen our commercials on TV, right? If somebody calls the call center, never visits the web and purchases, it's a very common problem. How do we take credit for it?
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that we've had to uncover along the way, and it's a work in progress, and every day you make a little bit more progress, and every day you have more conversations that sort of open up the eyes of your business partners to your reality, and I think that's important to help to pull back the curtains and help your partners see a glimpse of your reality and help you figure out where to get the data and how to stitch the data and how to look at the data.
Very interesting. Thank you. And so I'm stuck on this analogy, but I'll move off it. Words of caution that have come up because of this? Lessons learned, things you would do differently?
I think it's important for people to understand why we're here, fundamentally. I think if we miss that, then we're just going to have more problems down the line. So I would say that's probably the biggest lesson learned. I would say the goal is, if you were to stop anyone who works in the business anywhere, in an elevator, in the cafeteria, and say, what does marketing do? They can answer. Without a doubt, they can say, marketing is here as an enabler to drive sales for the business. They not only can they say that, they believe that, and they know the daily motions that we take to actually get that done. So that, for me, is the biggest lesson learned, is people need to understand fundamentally, why are we here? And if we haven't done that, then we're probably going to have more misses down the line.
Very good. And Leanne, the same question. So I really like this idea of starting with why, and I've watched the YouTube podcast. Are you sort of resetting as well, getting back to fundamentals? Why are we here as a marketing department? What are we trying to accomplish? Lessons learned, what are you doing with words of caution to the audience, given everything you've been through this last number of years?
Absolutely. I think asking that question why and being able to rumble about those business metrics has been really important for us. And I think the one lesson that I learned this year that I wish I would have learned 2 years ago when I was first setting up our first kind of D2C or direct-to-consumer channel would have been to actually get a little bit more creative about the metrics. So we talked about how the metrics have to be really meaningful to the business and they have to be real. And a lot of times we go all the way to sales. But some of us work in environments where we're actually not selling directly to the client. We're working in a space where we are kind of working B2B2C, or we lose visibility of the final sale. And where we've been able to get creative is saying to the business, what else would be super meaningful? What if I could run a digital campaign and uncover all the clients in the database who have a mortgage coming up for renewal, and then when? That would really improve our campaigns. We know it would improve their performance. But wouldn't having that data be incredibly useful to the business? Or what if I could run a campaign that asks clients how they're feeling? What's most important to them? We live in a world in the wealth management space where a lot of our products are kind of relevant for the long term. It can be hard to create urgency. The best way that we can create urgency for an advisor to reach out to a client is that we know that something's on their mind. So what if I could run a campaign that tells you what clients are thinking about and helps you prioritize your sales pipeline? So that would be my encouragement to you. When you don't think you have the right metric, just get creative. Keep asking those questions until you find it.
Very cool. And into the operating model, I know we've talked a lot about success and metrics and being creative, but can you tell us a little bit more about what changes you made? I know we talked about Agile a little bit. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So hands up if people currently work in what they would call an Agile marketing environment. I'm just curious. A few hands. Probably still less than half. Yeah, a whole bunch of people over there on your team. That's my team. Great. So I was part of a transformation in the past where we actually restructured all the teams and went agile. And in my current work environment, we actually run more traditional waterfall. But what my encouragement would be to people who aren't running agile is that there's a lot that we can learn from the mindset that we can plug into our businesses. And just a few kind of tangible takeaways. First off, agile is all about as often as we can, releasing to the market to get feedback as we move towards a goal, as we move towards that metric that we've spoken about. So that's something that we can do kind of regardless of how we're moving the work through the shop, right? We can be really, really focused on that. And I found one thing that's just a little bit of a hack. If you've read about Agile and you know that it's all about releasing often to the market, to the actual consumer for feedback, you might have heard about this word, minimum viable product. And I find, depending on who you work for, who your CMO is, like maybe you don't work for someone as cool as Chris that wants all the test and learn, I don't know. You might want to focus on kind of the minimum lovable product, right? We want it to be great. We need it to be compliant. We need it to be on brand and uphold all of those brand deliverables. But how could we skinny it down to get something out to the market to put our toe in the water just a little bit more quickly? And I think it works really well with digital marketing, because maybe we can only build the front end of a journey first, and we're going to start to test and see how it goes. So I would encourage you, to think about how you can adopt some of the principles. Another key principle I'll give you from Agile that's been incredibly helpful to me, and it really relates well to what we've been talking about today, is the idea of return on effort. So we talked about you being kind of at the business table and you're working with stakeholders and you're asking them, what metric am I going to drive, right? That's kind of step one. But sometimes I have a few business partners where they really come to the table knowing exactly what they want their tactic to be, right? It might be like an elaborate series of videos that require a ton of work and build before we've even tested the concept or the idea. So what I can start to do with them is estimate the effort that would go into that build and talk to them about the return on effort. And I find that works really well to have those hard conversations, to kind of equip you to have a business conversation with someone about the value that your team brings to the table and kind of how you're going to help move towards a metric. So I hope there's just a couple. Like I said, I was going to try to go a little bit detailed to try to give people some tips that have worked for me. And I think those, when I look back at what I was able to do, working non-agile, were really helpful things to plug in.
Thank you. Adiela, I know we talked about Agile, and when I was at a fintech, a startup, we were having those 2-week, reviews of product, getting the MVP out. In an organization of your size, I'm imagining Agile's got its place. How does it work with marketing?
Yeah, so within our specific team, we do work in Agile. So we have, for our creative, we do have Agile squads. We work in 2-week sprints. We have user stories. One thing that I'll say is important is every team does Agile a little bit differently. It's about incorporating the mindset and everything that Leanne just talked about. For us, one thing that really stands out is this element of deeply understanding the customer. As I mentioned before, we serve many different groups. So as an example, we serve doctors of Ontario. We also serve the engineers across Canada. And as you can imagine, we also serve lawyers, right? So it's the same product. They buy our health and dental, travel, etc. But they are different. So our Agile teams spend quite a bit of time trying to understand each unique audience. As you can imagine, what an engineer wants to see is completely different from what a doctor wants to see and how they want to be spoken to. So our Agile teams spend quite a bit of time doing that research and testing of different concepts to really understand how to frame things before it goes out into market. The other thing I'll say is our Agile teams are also placed on the marketing funnel. So what I mean by that is we've adopted this approach where we function as a team across the customer life cycle. So if you think about the traditional marketing funnel, it's like very big up here, there's a bunch of awareness, then consideration, then you go all the way down to loyalty, and then it's very tiny at the bottom. We've adopted, and thanks to my predecessor, we've adopted a more modern funnel where, yes, you bring in all the customers, but after you bring them in, it doesn't stop there. It expands again. So you bring them in and then you do all this work to make sure that they're having a great time. So you do a whole bunch of life cycle work, onboarding work to make sure that they're having a great experience, and then you do a whole bunch of retention work and cross-sell, upsell. So you actually make the funnel bigger again towards the end. So our Agile teams are actually structured along the funnel. Some of them focus on talking to customers that we don't know. So bringing in customers into the funnel, and then some of them work on customers that we do know, making sure that they're enjoying their experience with us and then selling more to them.
That's fascinating. As I'm not a native marketer, but I've never heard this concept of expanding the funnel in the middle. Is this common? Is this something radical that you've come up with?
I didn't come up with it. My
Okay.
predecessor came up with it. I do think it's brilliant, though.
Yeah.
But why don't we ask who adopts that funnel?
Yeah, that's really
the one
cool.
that is tiny in the middle and then expands again.
Show of hands. Anybody doing this? One reluctant hand. Any enthusiastic hands? Two?
Yeah, the reason we do it is because we tend to focus all this effort in marketing into bringing in new customers, right? We bring them in, and then we don't even treat them well. We don't talk to them once we bring them in.
We don't
even
ask.
treat them well. We don't ask them anything. And then when it's time to renew, they're like, why are you talking to me?
Yeah.
So it was born from, we do need to do a lot of work to bring in the customer, yes. But once we bring them in, it's actually way cheaper to just keep the customers you do have. And if you have more than one product like we do, sell them more.
Yes. Love that thought. Leanne, thoughts?
Well, we actually do have a very large focus on kind of expanding the back of the funnel and focusing on kind of the current client base. And I think really focusing on empathy, like you just touched on, is really critical. So we talked a lot about the step back in the metrics discussion, but I think that step back into the client empathy, you know, what are they going through right now? What are they thinking about? And how as marketers can we connect in with them to understand that is incredibly valuable. So it's very different. It's almost like talked about less at conferences, I think, than that really like high, you know, initial attraction, lead gen conversion marketing, but it's incredibly important. And, you know, in theory, the better job that you do with that end of the funnel, you know, the less work you have to do bringing people in.
Yeah, I've always believed that. Once you have someone that far through the funnel, the referral business you can extract from that, the cost of client acquisition, I'm sorry, I'm opining here, but lessons learned, thank you, lessons learned through this process, through the funnels, through reorganizing and trying some things agile. What would you say your big lessons have been, Leanne, for the last year or two? If you had to list 3 things.
Yeah, a few things. One would be look at what's working well in the business that has good metrics around it, but think about how you can scale it through digitization. So I gave a few of those examples about how digital campaigns could do something that humans are doing at a bigger scale and then better equip the humans. I think getting really crystal clear about your metrics. We didn't talk about it much today, but we have really good dashboards. But we didn't always. That's really been an effort, and I can't take credit for it. I think our MarTech leader really hired the right team to kind of bring together that aggregate data. But however you do it, it's not about having more, but it's really about having access to data that really focuses on those key metrics that the whole team can see. And probably the third one is just around, you know, being willing to take that upfront time to rumble a little bit about like, well, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And for anyone that's in a leadership role, I would encourage you to do that so that your teams can focus on what they need to do to be successful. Because I think as leaders, we need to step up and take on some of those hard conversations.
Very interesting. Adiela, same question.
Yep. Number 1, change is hard. It's really, really hard. We work with humans. Humans find it very hard, as they should, to adopt new ideas and methodology and change behavior. So it's important to acknowledge that and to understand that and to work with the humans and figure out how to communicate to the humans why we need the change and how to change. So that's one. I would say I've seen a lot of leaders go into things like changing an organizational structure like we did with kind of false expectations of like, well, everybody's just going to get in line. And of course they're going to get it. It makes sense. But in reality, I think it's really hard. And the more we can acknowledge that and work with the humans to get there, I think that puts everyone in a better place. Besides the whole change element, I would say from an org structure perspective, you also have to be willing to pivot very quickly. So
Right.
you can't go into it as like, this is the thing, we've put it on paper, therefore this must be the thing. As an example, there are certain campaigns that we have that don't quite fit in a specific place in the funnel. They're just kind of all over the funnel. So we can't decide who should take it. And in that case, we're not going to say, oh, well, we said we're structured this way, therefore we must do this, right? I think you have to be open to using your discretion and pivoting along the way where it makes sense, and you have to empower your teams to be able to do that.
Very cool. Thinking about that, and especially the human part, I really am just starting to get the default mode network that we all operate with and how hard it is to reprogram. But good tools, good channels, good data points. I know you talked about dashboards, Leanne. Was that lucky that you found good data? Was it hard work to unearth good data? Did it take a long time? Can you just tell us tools and what you got from it?
Well, in my experience, the key was giving all of the people on the team access to the data. But these dashboards, we had to prioritize, and it was a whole year for a dedicated person really building our dashboards, going across the organization and stitching together the data that was specially curated towards the goals that we'd agreed to focus on. So not just, a data dump. We use Tableau internally, so it does kind of give everyone access to the data. A little bit scary because it means that people outside of marketing have access to your dashboards as well if you work in that kind of an environment. But I think that was one piece of, the first step is people really understanding the goal, having that clearly articulated, why are we doing this the way we're doing it? And then the second is being able to show that ongoing progress towards the goal.
Any specific tools come to mind? Things that you went, oh my gosh, I got to share that at the conference?
Yeah, so I think however you get there with a dashboard, I wouldn't say that I have a specific tool to recommend, but the other piece that was really valuable for me as a leader, and we've played around with tools, so again, I'm not completely focused on one over the other, but we currently use Monday.com, and because I'm old, I'm like, it could be a pretty spreadsheet that's posted on the internet, and it would probably do the same thing for me. But what's really key about it is having an at-a-glance view of exactly what the team is working on and what goal that particular campaign drives towards at all times, so that across the team, we know who's on what's in our backlog because we can't do everything at once, what's our current focus, and then how are we tracking against those metrics. So getting all of that organized, I think really helps just bring people along on the journey. And then some of these tools where we have open access, where you can bring in partners, etc., it's just an efficiency. I don't want to be wasting my time making a PowerPoint just so I can go to a meeting. I want to have tools that are just always basically open on my computer so that at any given time I can be like, here's what my team is doing.
Awesome. Adiela, same question.
Yeah, I would agree with Leanne. We don't struggle with tools, and I would imagine most of the enterprise org, the struggle is not, do we have tools? We have a lot of tools. Some of them I don't even know, right? I would imagine smaller businesses would struggle with we need Adobe or we need Monday.com, etc. So I will speak from my personal experience. We don't struggle with access to tools. I would say what's made the biggest difference for us is road mapping. So back to what you mentioned is the squads and my leadership team, so the leaders that lead each of the individual teams, kudos to them, right? They've done a great job of putting together what are we going to tackle this year and why is it important from a strategic lens? Why does it matter? And then what do all of the initiatives ladder up to? So I would say that taking the time and effort, and I do remember how much time it took one of my particular leaders to put this together. So I would say taking that time and effort to do the road mapping, it's not easy, but it does set you up well. So everybody knows here's the non-negotiables, and then you will get random asks, right? Your CEO will go to a conference somewhere and see a cool idea and call you in the middle of the night and be like, so-and-so did this thing, can you do it? And then you'll be like, no, remember I have these 5 other things that we already committed to. I think if you don't have that road mapping, you won't have clarity, and then you'll keep getting, as you get pulled in different directions, you'll forget what your North Star is.
That's a great point. It makes me wonder about how you prioritize. How do you keep those 5 things in the right order and keep them moving, especially when you get these?
I think we'll be prioritizing for the rest of our career. I think it's a completely false expectation if you think that you're going to
It's
master
set.
the art of prioritization. I
Okay.
think we need to set the expectation and be honest that it's an ongoing thing. So I encourage my team to work with their direct leaders, even on a daily basis. Like if they need to do it daily, they should do it.
Wow.
To prioritize and reprioritize. So within our teams, I encourage them to work together to prioritize. And then for our team, with our business partners, we need to work together to prioritize. It is an ongoing, ever-changing.
Yes.
However, the goal should always be clarity. The goal should not be, oh, we can't redo something. The goal should be, it's okay to redo it as long as we all agree that here's where the focus area is. Where I tend to see people
Yeah.
fall down is when they don't have
drift.
clarity
Yes.
on what we're doing.
Yes. And I love that from the Agile methodology, that you're always refocusing at the end of the sprint. Is it in? Is it out? Leanne, same question. So, talking about the tools, challenges, I know we talked about data, but prioritizing
Yeah.
that challenge.
Well, it was funny. So this is actually something that I learned fresh this week. Does anyone in the room work on the TD emails? Because my head of sales gets the TD emails and finds them very inspiring. And they're awesome. So whoever's out there doing that, great marketing.
Stand up, take a bow.
Come meet me at the break if you're here. But what my aha moment was it does relate down to that prioritization, right? Like TD just had this great way of positioning mortgages, and why aren't we doing it through our direct to client, consumer way of doing things? And we are marketing to existing clients, so we're not marketing to the same group as TD. This might be worth trying, but how does it stack up against my priority list? The other aha moment was my head of sales doesn't receive my mass market emails. Like, I don't think it's a top secret that he's not part of my target client. And I was looking at this TD email, and it was well done, and I said, this is so much like the one that my team did like 2 weeks ago. So I need to get these leaders that are out there getting all of these ideas to be really in tune with what we're putting out as well. I need to add them into these campaigns, find ways to get their visibility on the work we're doing and on the priorities that we're doing. We can still be inspired by new, pretty, shiny things that we see out there, but it's going to make that prioritization conversation so much more easy to have when I do a better job of keeping them up to speed on the current priorities.
Thank you for sharing that. So changing behaviors, it sounds like, you're laser focused, you're taking ownership of what you need to do. Have you run into resistance, or have you had any great stories about helping other people in the organization change behaviors?
Over the years, I've run into resistance in different environments. My current environment is incredibly entrepreneurial, so it's very easy to get a yes. It is actually not hard, and that's great. Obviously, I still have to work with legal and compliance, but for me, the thing that's hard is prioritization, because we want to do everything at once, and we're only as big as we are. So I think that's really what I'm going to be looking to get some tips on, and like I said, how I can improve is really in focusing on what are the priorities that we can do and how can we find ways to do more with less as we go.
Nice. Adiela, same question, changing behavior.
To the question of resistance, I haven't faced sort of direct resistance. I think maybe people talk about it behind my back, I don't know, but not to my face. I do think that's why I mentioned change is hard, so it's important to bring people along. So not in that realm, but the thing about change and changing behaviors is I think that it takes systems. So I don't think people fundamentally change their behavior just by being told to change their behavior. Some people do, but I think that's difficult. I think if you actually want behavior to change, you have to put something in place to make that change happen. And the thing that you put in place depends on your unique circumstance and your unique humans, right? So for some people, it's like, okay, what do we put in the individual KPIs so that at year end, when you're having your compensation and promotion discussion, it makes sense. Or if you're having your quarterly check-in, it makes sense. That may be the system. For other teams, the system may be we are going to institute a bi-weekly reporting meeting where everyone has to look at the dashboard, so they're forced to look at the numbers, right? So I think whatever the system is, as leaders, we have to find what the right system is, and sometimes it takes trial and error. But I do think changing behavior requires systems that will cause people to stop and think and make that change.
Very good. And speaking of, what are some of the next steps you have planned for your teams?
Oh, that's a great idea. Great question. I just fundamentally want them to feel empowered in their role and to, again, not think of themselves as people who make tchotchkes. I just want them to feel great about what they do and about what they drive. And because of the types of products that we sell products that actually help humans. I want them to own that and sort of wear that as a badge of honor. So really, that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's great language. Help humans. Leanne, same question.
One of the things we're really focused on right now is how are we welcoming clients and sharing our value proposition when we first bring them in, and how are we getting more consistency in our client experience? So as we continue to tool up with our digital solutions, it's allowing us to do that. And then I think speaking about that human element, a next step for me is like, which people am I going to put specifically in charge of just like shepherding and kind of taking care of those key pivotal brand moments, so that we have even more clarity on who's doing what. And we talked a lot about, they have to know why they're doing it, but getting even more granular on what are these key moments that matter and who's going to be responsible for them.
Terrific. Thank you. I know we've got 5 minutes left, so I wanted to leave a little time so I wasn't the only one asking you questions.
Sure.
But if we've got any questions from anyone in the audience, please raise your hand. We'll have a microphone brought to you, and you can pick the brains of these two fabulous digital marketers. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, Adelia, you mentioned at the beginning...
Sorry to interrupt. Could you start with
Sorry,
your name and your company?
my name is Glenn Thomas from RGA, Reinsurance Group of America.
Thank you.
VP of Global Brand. You mentioned earlier the centralization of the marketing function that you've gone through. And sort of, I think we've all been through that question, is like, should it be in the business, should it be centralized? Chris mentioned in terms of the importance of actually understanding the business and being embedded in that business knowledge. How in your change have you actually addressed that ability for them to maintain a full understanding of the business knowledge while being centralized?
Yeah.
And being also respected by the business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. So with my team, my sort of mantra is partner, partner, partner. That means that I task each individual with the responsibility of going and meeting people and learning new things. So some of the things we've done systematically, as an example, they have to do call listening. So they have to sit. We don't mandate how often they have to do it, but they do have to do it. They have to sit and listen to the customer calls on the phone so they can get a better understanding of the customer, the products, the motions that our sales team goes through, et cetera. So there are a few things that we put in place like that to foster that sort of learning and collaboration. However, for me, I task each individual. So I say, as a personal example, I don't understand anything to do with actuarial stuff. I think it's really cool, but I think it's like for super smart people. So I go and spend a lot of time trying to understand that. So I force each individual to go and spend more time. I invite, product teams to come speak to my team. We may or may not do job shadowing. So I think it's in the daily motions, and it's in the repetitive. Things take repetition. We think about that a lot in my team. It's the repetitive conversations of educating and re-educating people, and then it's putting things in place to sort of mandate that learning and that understanding that gives us the credibility in front of the business.
Excellent. Any other questions? We're almost at time. Yes, at the back of the room.
Hi, my name's Ia from Interact. So my question is about decision making actually. So with the amount of data that you unlock, decision making can be paralyzing. There's always something to kind of consider. So what are your principles to actually make swift but thoughtful decisions for your team?
Leanne, do you want to start?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, we did talk about really being picky about what ends up on your dashboard and being selective. So I think that's a first step. And I think in terms of swift decision making, I think it comes back to that fact that marketing is a bit of a mix of art and science. So we're going to have indicators. Like when I first ran the lead gen campaign, Performance Max, like it just about tanked us. And it was tanking us very quickly with very poor quality leads that the sales team just didn't want to follow up in. It was not a good experience. So I didn't need a lot of data in that situation to go, okay, there's enough of qualitative information to make a decision quickly. So I think you can't be paralyzed by your data. You have to be empowered by it. And sometimes you're going to have to make a decision to put something on hold while you figure it out or while you wait for data. But you can also lean on any of that qualitative information at the same time.
Excellent. And folks, we're at time. So a round of applause for Leanne and Adelia. Great job. Thank you so much.